Okay, good afternoon. Welcome back to the second half of our webinar series this afternoon on BEEST 12.12. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, I got a reminder that at the webinar right now. Okay, I think most of you attended the webinar an hour ago that talks about the some of the new features in BEAST 12.12 and at least the regulatory pieces of it and how those are um, included in the new version of BEAST. This presentation was originally supposed to be about how to use our new Receptor Networks feature in BEAST and another feature that we had worked on called source groups, which is different than our regular source groups that we have in the source options menu. But I'm kind of removing the source groups part of this. This is kind of causing more trouble than it's worth right now. So we're going to take this out of the next version of BEAST. And so I'll give you some instructions on how to handle it right now in BEAST 12.12, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. The reason why I'm calling this using receptor networks in BEAST 12.12-12.13 is because I think y'all have noticed there are some bugs in BEAST 12.12. We've put together a recording that kind of tells you the bugs that we're aware of anyway, and how to kind of avoid them. And our um, our biggest recommendation right now is not to use BEEST 12.12 if you don't have to, at least for air mod. You'll need to use 12.12 for air met, for air surface, and air map. But for actual air mod runs, you can use BEEST 12.12 and just link it um, to the new version of air mod 24142. And in that recorded webinar, it tells you how to do that. So I won't go through all those bugs now, but the reason why I'm saying 12.12, 12.13, if you want to skip 12.12 altogether, this is kind of a preview of what you're going to see in BEAST 12.13. Okay, there were some significant structural changes to BEAST 12.12 that have nothing to do with the updates to AirMod 2.24142 and the other AirMod components. Those things were incorporated just fine. They weren't really a big problem. There were some other BEAST, enhancements that, like James talked about, the like measuring lines on screen and updating the way uh, we input area source information and a few other things. Like those all went very smoothly. Um, but the big change we have is what we're calling receptor networks. And the idea is that you can now tell BEAST when you do your model run, which receptors do you want to include in each run. There is a note here that this really only applies to AirMod. It doesn't work for if you're running ISC or ISC prime. And actually, if you need to run ISC or ISC prime, definitely use BEAST 12.11 rather than BEAST 12.12. And if you need an old copy of BEAST 12.11, let me know. Well, actually, no, it's on our website. Okay, so before we get into the receptor networks, let me just tell you about what receptor options are available in AirMod. When you put receptors into AirMod, you can put in program generated grids. This is where you tell it, this is the southwest corner of the grid, and this is the spacing I want for my grid. And you can do program generated grids in a Cartesian format or in a polar format. And then within that, there's kind of like a subcategory of uniform Cartesian and non-uniform Cartesian, and the same uniform and non-uniform polar grids. The uniform, say, Cartesian grids are all evenly spaced. But if you want to do a non-uniform grid, you can have the first couple of rows like spaced, 100 meters apart, and then the 3rd through the 10th row spaced 1,000 meters apart. It doesn't have to be uniform. But all of those are just under the category of just grid in AirMod and in BEEST. Now, in addition to that, we have the option to put in discrete receptors, either in a Cartesian format or in a polar format. And Cartesian receptors, discrete Cartesian receptors can be, just dropped in individually, but they also include what we call in BEEST, the BEEST special grid. The BEEST special grid, once it gets into AirMod, it's just another set of discrete Cartesian receptors. If you partition your AirMod runs, all of your receptors will be converted to discrete receptors, just to keep that in mind. Okay, so now BEEST will let you choose which specific grids you'd like to include in your AirMod run. You can also, you can also identify subsets of discrete receptors within a network name. So BEEST 12.12 has new screens both in the receptor menu and in the AirMod setup screen. By the way, I'm going to go through these slides to kind of like show you basically how it works, and then I'm going to close PowerPoint and go through a sample file with you guys. Okay. Okay, so right now, this is our basic grid screen. It's not the discrete grid. We can only put in 5 different regular grids. I think James probably mentioned this in the earlier one. You can click the one that says program generated, Cartesian or polar. Those are our uniform grids. The other ones that say Cartesian or polar, those are non-uniform grids. But whatever you want to choose here, there's only the option for 5 of them. And then there's also something called a net ID right next to that. The net ID we're going to need that in order to make our receptor selections when we go to run AirMod. So I think BEEST is going to make an ID for you, although you can change it if you want to. It's just a kind of a label. Now, in BEEST 12.12 and in BEEST 12.13, you can put in up to 50 of these Cartesian or polar grids. So it's pretty much the same inputs, just more of them. Sorry. Okay. Go back. Now, this is our discrete Cartesian tab in the receptor options. Right now, it looks like what we see on the left in BEEST 12.11 and in BEEST 12.12, everything is the same except we have one new column right in front that says network name. Now, if you don't want to do anything different, if you just want to keep running BEEST just like you've been running it all along and not worry about any of this new stuff, just leave that column blank. You can even leave that column blank if you do want to use the new options, but you're not required to. But if you wanted to give individual receptors a network name, then it will group those kind of receptors together for you. This network name only appears in BEEST. It does not show up in AirMod, like in your AirMod input file. So, why are you doing that? So now we're going to take a quick look at the run screen. This is when you hit run AirMod. It takes you to this AirMod setup screen. And so I'm looking at the same run on the left as I am on the right. Well, it's just not the same run. But on the left, you choose your pollutant that you're going to run, and you have to select whatever met year is associated with that pollutant, and that's it. Now we have these 3 new blocks that you have to address. And what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on these 2 blocks, the one on the left, discrete receptors, and the one in the middle that says receptor grids. That's what we're kind of going to play with here. Make more sense. Sorry. When we zoom in on this screen a little bit, we can see that under the discrete receptors tab, you're going to have some options about whether you want to model all the receptors in the file, that all value is going to be there always. So if you want to just keep, if you don't need to use these receptor options, that's what you would click all. We want to run all the receptors. Also in the middle, if you have a bunch of those program generated grids, you can select which ones you want to include in the model. And then the source groups table that's over here on the right, just that is not going to be included in BEEST 12.13. And for the moment, what you need to do is check every single box that you can check. Some of them might be grayed out, but anything that is available to check in the source groups option, you need to check them all. Okay, we're going to do a little demonstration of a 1 hour SO2 SIL run, which starts with a full receptor grid. We're going to figure out the area of impacts caused by that run, and then we're going to talk and then do a next run with it. And we're not actually going to do the run. I'm just going to show you how to do it. And then we will talk about maybe changing the property line and seeing what that does. Okay. Let me. Okay, so this is an actual site. It is the Limestone Energy Generating Center, or LEGS. It's over in Limestone County, Texas. This is not one of our clients. The TCEQ has a lot of publicly available modeling data on their website, so I wanted to just pick something that seemed a little bit more realistic. So picking an actual site here. However, the sources that I've put in here are fake. The way that this is set up right now is the plant itself already has 3 process lines, a line 1, line 2, line 3. And the project they want to do is right here. This is our new line. It'll eventually be line 4. And so the first thing we want to do here is just run the new project by itself and compare those impacts to the SIL. So if I look here in my source inputs, see, I have all my sources here. I'm going to run just this first run right here, the 1 hour SO2 SIL run. I only have emissions here for my new site, and everything else is blank. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run and air mod, and then it'll take us here to our new screen for executing the model with all of our different selections we can make. I'm just picking this one file, the 1 hour SO2 SIL run, picking that metadata set. And then discrete receptors for this one, I want all of them. I want every receptor in the grid for my initial run. I don't have any like program generated grids in here, so there's nothing to select. Any of these grade buttons, you can't select it anyway. If I had the Beeline special grid in there and not already converted, I could check that, but it won't let me do that here. And then again, in the source groups option, this is going away. Just make sure you click everything in the source groups option. So I'm going to run this model, and I'm not going to actually do it because it takes time, and I've already run it. Let me show you what the outputs look like. All right, so I've done this model run. This is a 1 hour SO2 run. And the SIL for 1 hour SO2 is 7.8 micrograms per cubic meter. And it looks like we're definitely over the SIL. We've got some receptors over here that are over the SIL, and it looks like some over here as well. But the next step in this is to do a full site-wide cumulative NACS evaluation, but only with this kind of subset of receptors, not all of the receptors in the grid. So the first thing I want to do is just save my significant receptors. And I can do that by clicking over here on the left side of the screen where it says radius of impact. I click on that, and I tell it our significant impact level is 7.8 micrograms per cubic meter and hit OK. It is going to estimate the radius of impact. And if I right click again on the screen, I have the option under radius of impact to save only significant receptors within the RFI to a CSV file. So I'm going to hit that. and save that little CSV file in my folder. Okay, so before I do the next step, I want to show you a little bit about what this looks like. So right now, when I'm looking at the entire grid, I have this kind of chunky Excel plot of what my receptors look like. If I wanted to look at just the AOI, it's going to look like this. So it's not quite as many receptors. But I figured out which of those receptors are actually in the AOI. So tell me I didn't hide this. I did. Okay, so what I've done is in this little network name area, anytime that receptor is in the AOI, it puts a little note in here that says AOI. Come on. That's a multiplier. Oh, no, sorry, it's here in this yellow section. Okay, so most of these are blank, but some of them you can see say AOI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this file that I've been working in. I'm going to save a copy of it. You absolutely do not have to save a copy of it if you're doing this in real life. I'm just trying to keep my thought processes separate. Okay, so now what I want to do is go to my receptors. I have all of these discrete receptors, a bunch of them, 18,000 discrete receptors. I'm going to go to my little cheater Excel file that I've put together, and I'm going to copy the network names that I've generated. I've either the receptor is either blank or it's in the AOI. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my network names, and I'm going to put those. I'm just going to paste Control V right here. Now, I'm going to hit save. When I go to run AirMod, this time when I'm doing like my full max run, I have some other options here. So first of all, I don't want the emissions from just the project. I want these from the whole site. And then when I run the receptors, I don't want all of them. I only want the ones that are in the AOI. So what happens now is when BEEST tells AirMod to build the input file, it's only going to include these 2,917 receptors instead of all of them. And let's say I've already done that and run the model, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to look at my Lex2 run, which I've already done. And so now, this doesn't have nearly as many receptors in it. The NAX is actually, what is it, 196? So we're having some problems. They happen to be over here. And then the client comes back and says, there's a big parcel of land right to the south of this that we're thinking about buying. How does that change our impacts? So the next thing I want to look at is which one of these receptors are actually inside this parcel that I've kind of outlined here in pink. So I'm going to go back to my book, my workbook, and I've made a note that tells me which of the receptors that are over here are actually inside that parcel. And then within that group, only some of those receptors that are on the parcel also fall inside the AOI. But the ones that we really need are the receptors that are in the AOI, but not in the parcel, or calling AOI off parcel. So what I've done here is I've split the labels into what previously just said AOI. You guys can see this. And now it says, this just said AOI before, and now it tells you if it's AOI on parcel or AOI off parcel. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these receptor identifiers And I'm going to, actually I'm going to save this again, save as legs 3. And I'll go to my receptors again, to the, no, sorry, that's sources, receptors, discrete Cartesian. I'm going to paste in the new network names. And then when I go to run it, run AirMod, I have some other selections. Like last time I just had the blank, B and the AOI. And now I have AOI off parcel and AOI on parcel. And so for this run, I just want the receptors that are not in the parcel, because we're assuming here that our client is going to buy this piece of property. What are the impacts going to be now? And if I go ahead and do that run, then we'll get something that looks like this. So it has just our impacts, that are outside of that parcel, but do fall in the original AOI. In this particular case, it didn't make any difference. Our highest impacts are way over in this little corner, but it could have. So that's kind of just an illustration of where you might want to choose which receptors you want to model at runtime. This is not perfect. I already have a list of improvements, that I would like to see in the next version of BEEST. It's not going to be in BEEST 12.13, but we're definitely looking into it for future versions of BEEST. The first of these is being able to add the ability to assign a specific receptor grid grouping to each pollutant. Right now when you run the model, you pick your pollutants and then you pick like which metadata set goes with that pollutant. There's no way right now to pick which receptor grouping goes with that pollutant. You have to make that change every time, at runtime right now. But if I could say, when I do my SO2 sil run, pick these receptors, and when I do my SO2 NAX run, do these receptors, I think that would be helpful. Also, right now, when you change grids and you run the model, AirMod does not include in the file name anything about the receptor grid selection. So if you run one grid, all of your receptors say in the first run, and then you tell it in the second run, I want to do, just some of them receptors. The AirMod file names are going to be the same. And in fact, one name would overwrite the old name. There is a feature in BEEST where you can add a file name appendix, but you have to do that manually. So let me see if I can show you what that is. Run AirMod. Yeah, right here. So if I'm doing a run that's like AOI off parcel, I'll have to, in order for me to make the file names different, I have to write AOI off parcel or something. It doesn't matter. Some comment that makes me distinguish this from the previous set of runs. So right now, this is unfortunately a manual process, but I'm hoping that that's something we can eventually automate. And then the other thing that I am hoping to get in here is to be able to visualize um, these different receptor grids on our input data graphically screen. Right now, when you look at your input data graphically on screen, it's going to show every single receptor in your BEEST file. It won't distinguish, which are part of the AOI grid and which are part of whatever. It's everything. But I think we should be able to give you the ability to pick which grid you want to look at, so you can at least look at that on screen. It'll be obvious in the outputs, looking at what's run, but it would be nice to see it in the inputs as well. So as you're going through this, if you have other suggestions of things you want to see for receptor networks or anything else, just please let us know. And that is everything I had in the presentation. let me open it up to questions.
Leslie, thanks for your presentation. A quick question if I missed it. What is the timeline for rolling out 12.13 version?
Yeah, that's no one's asked that yet. I'm kind of surprised. I don't know. I can't. I'm not gonna. I can't. I know I can't give you an exact date. It is not going to be this week. It is not going to be next week. Um, we are working on this as quickly as we can, but there were enough issues with BEEST 12.12 that we want to really make sure that 12.13 runs smoothly. So I am definitely thinking it's going to be in March, but when I couldn't say.
So in the interim until 12.13 is rolled out, you recommend that we go back to using 12.12? Oh, sorry, 12.11?
Yes, I would recommend going back to 12.11 for now. What you can do, let me do a couple things. First, in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and paste the link to our webinars on site. There is a webinar where I kind of discussed all the problems and ways to get around it. But if you are running, if you have BEEST 23132 installed, which is like what I have right now installed on my on my main computer, like this is two, what version is this? This is 12.11, sorry, BEEST 12.11, which runs AirMod 23132. What you can do is in the file menu up here, if you go to file and then go down to preferences and click that, on the preferences menu, there's an option that says model selection. We have over here on the right. And in this box right here where it says AirMod, it's linked right now to this airmod.exe executable. The one that comes with this program is going to be AirMod 23132. But you can change where this file is pointing. So what you'll need to do is download a copy from EPA of their new AirMod 24142 and then link to that new airmod.exe executable. If you do that, you will be able to run AirMod 24142 with BEEST 12.11. The only caveats to that are these three sources that have just gone from being beta options, or not sources, three options that have gone from being beta to becoming regulatory, the GRSM, the R-line, and core. That's going to be problematic because the 24142 assumes they're regulatory and BEEST 12.11 assumes they're beta. But other than that, it should work fine.
Thank you.
Sure.